All right. Good morning. Chris, we may as well, I don't want to get started on this just yet, but I did want to have it up on the screen. From our previous week in our Facebook page, oh, there's Ron. All right. On our Facebook page, I, let's see, yeah, wanted to point out the 3 things that we put in there. One was just my posting that basically says, is CS-Sensei working for you? Are you finding value in it? Do you think that this is a valuable program? And if so, do what you can to try and help me promote it. If I'm the only one standing on a mountaintop waving a flag, then this program may remain small and, homely, because there's only a small number of people that are getting benefit from this. If this is valuable, I'm asking you to please, like they always say, like, share, and subscribe, because it will get the word out, and then we'll have more people. We will have more viewpoints when we talk, and more ability to understand, hopefully, from other people who are trying to do the same thing that everyone else is. All the mentees are looking for entry-level cybersecurity jobs. So people can respond and say, this is how it went, or this is what I found, or, staring at the same thing. Remember, I talk about our homework. I call it that because it is something that you're supposed to take with you and do elsewhere and then bring back. Chris and I think you guys all see this, Chris and I do this instinctively. It's not something we were born with, but it's something that we have trained ourselves to do. We look at the world through a cybersecurity lens. We walk into a particular room or situation or meeting or whatever, and somebody says something or does something, and we immediately recognize the cybersecurity implications of it, whether it's a good thing to do or a questionable thing to do or whatever. We can, because we have trained ourselves, we look at things and say, and it causes us to think and maybe comment or make suggestions to other people that are going to make their lives better. For lack of a better way of saying it, the point of cybersecurity is to make the world a better place. Okay, so be thinking about this. If CS-Sensei works for you, please share. Please share. You can get to places we will never get. And I want one of these days for us to have half a dozen mentors and 60, 70, 80 mentees, and have to branch out in multiple sessions. We're getting so congested that we've got to find other time frames to do this so that everyone has an opportunity to share. So be thinking about that. I want this program to grow because I think it will provide greater value the bigger it gets. To an extent, if we have 1,000 mentees, we may have to change the format a little bit. But if we're talking, 50 or 60 mentees, we can handle that because a small number show up at this session. So if you've got 100 mentees and 10 show up, we can work with 10. If more show up, then there's greater value. Chris and I will split off and do multiple sessions. Just because I chose Saturday morning doesn't mean that that's what it has to be all the time. What did we begin with, Chris? Thursday afternoons or something, right? Yeah.
Thursday evenings.
Thursday evenings was how we began, and then I ran into schedule conflicts and everything, and I said, what's a one time that I'm always available? And that was Saturday afternoons. Also, you guys, this doesn't matter to you guys, to anyone that's listening except me. You guys, as I understand it, tonight, you spring forward. I don't. Arizona and Hawaii, I think, are the two states that don't observe daylight savings time. So right now it's 6:07 a.m., and next week this will be 5:07 a.m. And I'm happy to do that because that helps to make sure that my Saturdays are okay, because I'm going to do this from 5 to 6, and then the rest of my day is free. So I don't mind at all. I think it's a great opportunity to get things out, and also not to impede on anything else that I may be doing during the week. Another thing that we covered was my analysis. This was my analysis of the LastPass activity. Oops. Of the LastPass. I did lessons learned. Oh, no, the other one, my analysis was in login.gov. So this was LastPass from last week. So, okay, never mind. And then login.gov. This was my analysis. I hope you guys had an opportunity to read through this. According to this, 11 people got to see it. This was very helpful for me to be able to look at an article and see if I could draw all of the salient facts out of it. And also, if you notice, I made some observations based on that. That is the sort of thing that will help you in the long run if you do something like this in reference to a particular situation. And you know that you're going to be in tune with your supervision if you do it before you're asked. In other words, you understand what causes them concern, that keeps them nervous at night, those sorts of things. If you understand your organization's, I'm going to use your word again, Chris, risk appetite. If you understand that, then you'll be able to match that in your thinking and do things like this. The point of this was to do an analysis, to do a breakdown of where I think the main issues were, and then to make possible recommendations for what to do, what not to do, how to handle it, etc. in the future. So if you have ideas, this is a good way of doing it. If you remember the homework, this is sort of the way I would like people to do it. Do it in the form of lessons learned. But first, in order to do lessons learned, you have to understand what occurred. And sometimes an article is not good enough. Or even the IG report or any of that sort of stuff. Sometimes that's not good enough. You got to dig a little bit deeper because everyone summarizes. And their summaries are designed for who they think is going to need to hear them and in a manner that they think they will understand. Well, because this was an article, I was able to pull more information out of it and expand. Did anybody have any observations or whatever feedback from my analysis here? Any, something that you observed and found helpful or whatever? Okay. From Michelle Thomas, she put this up, this says an hour ago. It says, glad they got caught. The only service that works is their basic authentication. The rest, I don't think it's worth it. There are better products out there. That is, Michelle is speaking from an ISSO standpoint, basically saying, well, I wouldn't recommend login.gov anyway. The issue is, and this is why I brought it up, the White House was just about ready to publish a recommendation for login.gov. So they had to come clean and say, the Inspector General said, in its current form, login.gov does not provide what they say they're supposed to provide.
Hey, Scotty. I will put a comment in. Not only as you mentees should learn about the technical side of cyber and IT, and you provided this on your final line about the business part of IT. This is a great example of learning of the business of federal government and how it works, and combining the technical aspect of it with the procurement acquisition side of it as well. All these vendors are there to go where the money is, and the federal government has the money. Yeah, believe it or not, even though we're in a debt crisis, all that great stuff, yes, the federal government has that money. There are vendors out there who are hungry to have the government service and do whatever that needs to be done to get that money from the government. And I think one of the best things you could do is learn about business and learn about leadership. And once you have a federal government job, I'm currently taking a acquisitions course, the core level, and the project and program management courses. Those are a wealth of information and understanding of how the business of federal government works. And if you have an opportunity, if you get to a federal government job, please learn that course, even though you're not going to be a core or not doing anything on the acquisition side. You'll learn a lot from it. That'd be my guidance here, is especially learn business and finance and how things are done on the business level versus the technical level.
Right. Many organizations or activities may think that the federal government's way of doing business is far too bureaucratic, far too costly for normal organizations to implement, but how do I say this? It paves the road for the direction you should be heading anyway. Perhaps you may not be able to afford the, really expensive. I think I showed you the when DISA put out a prototype for zero trust. They did a zero trust prototype, and it took them a little over a year to accomplish. Sounded great, but the per seat cost was over $4,000 per person. So you definitely don't need to invest in that level of research if the federal government's already doing it for you. So even if you are not in the Fed, even if you have nothing to do with the federal government, all you do, you run a candle shop or something like that, you can observe the way in which the federal government is acting, the approach the federal government takes, and the tools the federal government recommends, and then try and find tools that fit your budget that do similar features to that. I agree with, I'm sorry, go ahead, Chris.
I'll give a great example. They're trying to teach, they being the directors, that zero trust is not a product. Zero trust is actually a principle, a cybersecurity topic of multiple different aspects. Read your books to figure out what those aspects are. There's actually pillars and all that great stuff. But they're teaching us, the people who are working on the IT end, hey, here are the questions you need to ask your vendors. What your situation is in your agency, and then grow it. Start it from a seed. No, I'm using my own words here, and then fit it in as you go along. And it's actually it's actually a very good strategy, because you don't need that big budget to implement quote unquote zero trust. You can start small with a little bit of your agency, and then grow it out and migrate it out as you figure out what you're doing and where you're going from there. But the lesson learned here is, when you get a product like that, like what login.gov is, ask questions, figure out, pardon my language, figure out what they're trying to sell. And I don't want to use the BS word, sorry. Call it the BS. Yeah, call it the junk. Thank you, Scotty. Call the company. know what those questions are and how to ask them is the bottom line, and know the products and know the actual principles in the end. So it's a great lessons learned.
Yeah, I will suppose that security practitioners up to even our CISO level, I will say, may be struggling to find the proper terms to use to explain to their seniors about how something, should be addressed or be made a concern or whatever. And maybe you have that key phrase because you've studied it, you understand a little bit about it, you've read deeper than the headlines. You read the headlines, the CEO reads the headlines, but the CISO reads more, so that they can expand on the headlines, they can provide clarity on the headlines. One of the big questions is, how bad is it, and does it apply to us? And maybe that's in reverse. Does this apply to us? How bad? So be thinking about that. It helps you to be able to speak these things. That's why we have this mentorship. It helps you to understand that I'm going to use our favorite bad boy in here, and I will never reveal his name, but when I spoke to him and encouraged him to join CS-Sensei 3 years ago, he said, yeah, I'm studying for my Security Plus, and I found that everything has a back door. And I was like, that is not a true statement. And I would never say that, because it is basically an all or nothing, and cybersecurity is rarely all or nothing. It's almost, I would say, exclusively remove that every or all or those sorts of things from your conversations, because that sounds like it is designed to be sensational, or it reaches the level of what's called rhetoric. And rhetoric is persuasive speech that people can either accept or not accept. Sometimes when someone hears someone speaking exclusively, always, never, those sorts of things, they will immediately say, you're being what's the word? You're going too far. You are exaggerating. And therefore, I don't want to listen to you. And it actually lessens the punch of your conversation. So be careful about always and never. Because, always, I'll give my greatest example. Hopefully, nobody ever said, nobody's going to ever fly a plane into our building at the Pentagon, because they did. And it causes you to reevaluate your approach on things. And oh, by the way, Chris, my desire next week is to do a full session on risk management, so that we can talk about speaking in terms of risk and what that means, how to identify, quantify, and qualify this. I am, just so everybody knows, I'm studied in risk management. It was part of my degree program. It was part of my PMP. It is something that greatly interests me. For 5 years with the Enterprise Service Desk, I was responsible for managing the risk register. So I had hundreds of risks all the time that we were quantifying and reviewing and listening for, and saying, is this something that has raised to a level that we need to address it, or is this something that we can put off for another month and talk about it later? That's all part of the risk management process. I was pretty good at it. There were 2 of us that did it in our entire contract of 115 people. So I think I can speak to it. So I would like to do that next week. I've already started the deck. Thanks, Chris. So before I go on to this slide deck that I have put together, does anybody have any conversations? Ron, do you have any updates on your particular situation?
Well, I had an interview Thursday,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a defense contractor, and the interview was kind of divided into two parts, like a general interview where it went over your experience, typical interview, and kind of to my surprise, there was a second part where they got into the really technical aspects of the position, in which I really did bomb pretty bad. But at the end, I kind of summed up, I am willing to learn, I'm hardworking, and all this other stuff. But I don't think I'll probably get a call back. But it was a great experience. It's been a long time since I've been interviewed, and I kind of reminded myself what I guess I really need to focus on, just continual studying, continually working on these certs, plugging my resume away.
Very good. Well, first of all, I'm proud of you for doing it. This is the way you get hired. You can't avoid it. Rarely are you going to be standing in a furniture store and somebody's going to offer you a cybersecurity job. You've got to go through the gauntlet. You've got to have a conversation with the people that are going to have to trust you and show them that they can. So, yeah, that's fine. Do you want to share, some of the most telling conversations or questions, things that, either you think you did pretty well at or things that you know you didn't do well and what you could do next time?
Well, I think all the technical questions I probably could have known if I had technical experience, or if I at least, had Network Plus, or maybe even A Plus. There are just a lot of acronyms in there I didn't know. I think the only way I kind of saved myself was to go against the instructions. He basically said, we're going to go through these questions and just tell us if you know it or not. And I didn't really follow that. I just kind of said, yeah, I'm hardworking after each question. And I just kind of went on and on about stuff. So hopefully that saved me. I don't think it did.
Okay.
But I guess the first part of the interview, they were asking like my general experience, and I thought I did pretty well. And I kind of went over my resume. I talked about the CS-Sensei. I talked about my programming skills and engineering skills. And one thing I think they were really interested in was that I was kind of local to the area. 'Cause they thought I was being from DC, and I already told the guy beforehand that I was locally in the area, and that kind of piqued their interest. So I guess employers out there want someone local as opposed to hiring someone from out of the area. I told them that I guess I could pass a clearance. I tried to give as much confidence that I could pass a clearance, and I told them that my real estate licenses in both DC and Maryland, I guess they require some kind of background, and they interpreted that as probably as close to public trust, and they jotted a few notes down. I think that I just really try to be marketable in their eyes as someone who can learn and work hard at it, be a team player, and I just crossed my fingers, but I don't think I'll be hearing back from them.
Okay. If you were the hiring manager, how would you evaluate yourself?
I guess the first.
Write a report card on Ron and how he did. Tell me your summary of Ron.
So I would say on the technical part, I would probably give myself a D. But the rest of it, this guy is good. He works hard, and he could kind of fill into the role. But overall, I guess I'd put myself probably like maybe high C, around that area, in the way I did in this interview.
Okay.
Hey, Ron, you said that some of the topics you felt were Network Plus and A Plus. Not to be growing further of what those topics are, what are the topics that you feel are Network Plus and A Plus that they talk about? Or specifically, what technical topics did you feel stumped on? Did you write them down so that you could learn them later? Or did you kind of say, ping? I don't know what ping is, or sorry, that's a poor example, but a firewall, or they said NGFW, or what? I digress. What topics did you felt were A plus Network Plus specifically?
Trying to remember offhand, it was kind of overwhelming, but I guess the easy one. They asked, could you set up a network by yourself from scratch? I said, well, no, but in my home office, I set up everything, and I kind of went on and on about my tablet, my Wi-Fi, and stuff, like really easy stuff to set up. And so I guess that's more Network Plus. The A plus questions, like there was an easy one about, like, could you set up a computer from, like, if you could take apart a computer and then put it back together, how long would it take? I think that was an easy A plus question. But there's just so many like technical questions that were in there. I just didn't really know.
Gotcha.
Okay. That's helpful, Ron. So do you know what you're going to be studying to help fill in some of those gaps?
I guess I'm gonna. Well, I signed up for the ISE squared CC. I'll go from there, and I guess they'll probably have some questions that have to backtrack to Network Plus and A Plus, and I'll just go from there. I guess I want to try to avoid really diving into Network Plus and A Plus, but I guess I'm fine with just kind of doing some background research.
Hey, Ron, I'll say this, and this is me looking back. If I was Chris doing this again, you can learn the A plus Network Plus material. I would not try for the cert unless it's specifically asked for in the application form on something you want to do, and that will save your money in the end. There's free YouTube videos about A plus Network Plus Security Plus. Professor Messer comes to mind.
Professor Messer. Yep.
And just use those to enhance your knowledge. The experience part, I'm not sure what to say about that. I did volunteer work experience at a nonprofit to refurbish computers and refresh them. Basically, wipe them out and put them back online and put the memory cards back in because they were disposed of. But try practicing that yourself. Take that interview question where it said, hey, can you do a network from scratch? Read about it on Network Plus and give it a shot. There's a lot of YouTube videos if you type Home Lab, Network Home Lab. You'll see what the interviewers are talking about. I think you know that already, so sorry for giving that advice.
Yeah, that's okay. It's good.
And one last thing, Ron, and this is by no means a criticism. First of all, again, I'm proud of you for even taking those steps. Those are the steps that are going to make you successful, all right? And there is especially with technical subjects, there's what's called paralysis by analysis. And that basically means you think about stuff all the time but never do it. We talk MFA, but then we don't implement it on our own blooming systems. That's paralysis by analysis. You have broken that because you have done the steps. You submitted a resume. You went out and looked, first of all, submitted a resume, got an interview, and went through that interview. Those are unavoidable, so the more practiced you get at it, the better you're going to be. The point of any resume, any meeting, you come out of it and you say, okay, what can I do next time to make this better? And you will never have that perspective if you don't step into the room that first time. So don't let them make you feel bad. And don't you worry about what you didn't do. I would like to try and make a recommendation. If you go back and look at some of the interview or the interviews that we had in our previous CS-Sensei webinars, I actually have a playlist on interviews that might be helpful for you. And so go take a look in our playlists and see if you can take a look at those. Also, one last thing. Where did you find this vacancy? Where did you find it?
Indeed. There's in my area, it's a Pax River Naval Air Base, so there's a lot of tech jobs in the area.
Yep. Patuxent River, for those of you who aren't in the Maryland area, is what it's called. Pax River was 42 miles from my house. So, yeah, I'm fully aware of it. My wife and I both, entertained the idea of working down there. So, yeah, Pax River is a Navy base. It's a naval aviation base. But they also have other activities. There's another one also down in the Prince George's, South Prince George's, Charles County area, and that is the it's right on the Potomac River.
And Andrews?
No, it's on the Potomac, down near Waldorf.
Oh, Indian Head.
Yeah, Indian Head. It's a small base, but you know what? They actually had, and I looked at the position. They have cybersecurity down there, at least one GS-12 position. Because I gave it a thought, and I said, I just can't take that big a pay cut to get down there. But it was so close to my house. If I wanted to, I could literally ride my bike to there.
Hey,
Yeah.
Scott, I got a question for you. Do you look at those jobs and say, hey, they want this, this, and this? Oh, wait a minute. I don't have this, this, and this. Create your learning plan and go from there and do it as a gap analysis and fill the gaps. Yep, I did the same thing as well.
It's always smart to examine the landscape. It's always smart so that you can say, how closely do I match this? And in some cases, you're far off. They're like, oh, I want somebody who can tune this particular product. Okay, well, I don't have experience in that product, so I know what they're looking for, but the chances of me landing it are pretty slim. I did see on LinkedIn, somebody talked about entry level. And, what is entry level? And this guy came out and said, literally, you don't have to have any experience. But what I need is somebody with passion. What I need is somebody who has interest. And Ron, we were talking about your interview questions, and your response was, you said it multiple times, I'm a hard worker. Remember that you're basically saying what everyone else says. Does anybody go into an interview and says, I don't work very hard? So you need to find something a little more catchy than I'm a hard worker or I'm a team player. I would say, and this is something that I've done, I was in a meeting with our CIO, and I've shared this before, up in New York, and they said, tell us a little bit about yourself. And we went around the room, and there were numerous people in that room that said, well, I'm a hard worker. I've been here 3 years. I do this, blah, blah, blah. And they got around to me, and I said, I'm Scotty Ward. I'm the program manager, and I love security. I love IT. And, they were like, what? I said, it gets me out of bed in the morning. I've been doing it for years, and I can think of nothing else that pleases me more than to do this. And after that, for the next year or so, the CIO would be walking down the hall in this great big 6,000 person building and would go, Scotty, because I caught in his mind. And sure enough, a couple of years later, I got a job, and he was my last interview. And, when he asked, why should I hire you? I said, I love doing this. Plus I've got all these qualifications. This is something that is my career. And it's just something I enjoy. I am passionate about it. I want to do it. I'm enthusiastic about doing it well. And I'm studying myself, not just at work, but I'm studying myself to get better. That might be a way of differentiating yourself in the future, Ron. When you have that conversation, be aware, and I've heard it. I can't count the number of times I've been in an interview and I say, can you, anything else about this? And they're like, well, I'm a hard worker. Yeah. As compared to, if other people don't say that, does that mean they're not hard workers? You're basically stating the baseline. Everyone that comes in should be a hard worker. So try and find something that's a little higher up than that. Where do my interests lie? Not just how they can see me. I'm gonna work. I'm interested. Find something that you can say that will make them believe that you'll be valuable if they bring you in. Not just I can do work. Think about I dig doing this. Or something like that. Catch their attention. It's the sort of statement that they'll be writing away, and you'll watch their pen, and it'll go, because you caught in their mind. That's what you're looking for.
Hey, Ron, did they ask you, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I did.
What questions did you ask? Or did you say I had no questions?
No, I had questions.
Okay, good.
I asked about tuition reimbursement, and I told them I'd like to pursue a graduate degree in some kind of tech field.
Mm-hmm.
I guess
shows your ambition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Benefits. Do I get any hardware? I can't. What else? What else did I ask? I don't remember. But I had a few others in there too.
My successful IT specialist interview, I asked a lot about the position, and I made it a two-way street with them. I asked them what their systems were. I asked them what operating systems they used. I asked, what else did I ask? Am I replacing somebody? And if so, what were they doing? And what were their specific duties? You don't want it to be let's say Scotty is interviewing me. You don't want to make it Scotty asks the question, Chris answers the question. You want to make it almost a two-way conversation.
Yep.
And make it totally about the position and the duties. And that will communicate to them that you're curious about that position. You are highly interested. It's almost unconscious when they do that. And I'll say that's one of the things that got me into the IT specialist role was I asked a lot of questions about my role and what I would be doing and what and where and what and how and why.
There is one more thing before we move on. One more thing that I will, I don't think I've ever spoken about this, but I will term it, I don't know what the official term is in interpersonal communications, but I will call it reflection. In other words, these interviewers are designing their conversation to be as unbiased as possible. In other words, I'm just here to ask you questions. But when you start getting into this two-way dialogue, you open up the opportunity for them to crow about what they're doing, the things that they're proud of, and by meeting or reflecting that enthusiasm, even if you hear what they're saying, you hear the voice go up a little bit, you see them lean forward, they start talking a little bit faster or something like that, speaking with an emphasis, you know this is a priority for them. If not, why would they be bringing it to you, the entry-level person that they're talking to? So this is, I thought about this when I was just now. It could be something that when they're talking, you're writing this down. Remember, it's always good to write down, especially when writing says, if it's important to you, it's going to be important to me. And literally one word, cool, could be enough. In other words, they're saying, we've done this and this and this and this and this. Cool. That is enough to say, I share your enthusiasm about your achievements. And it's one word. In other words, ooh, that sounds neat. They're enthusiastic, you have just been enthusiastic, and it has taken zero investment of time. A possibility, just something to think about. Reflect what they're thinking about. Get in their heads.
Hey, Scotty, I was told one time that interviews are not closed book exams. Is that true?
Oh, correct. Very, very true. Yeah.
So
I never walk into an interview with a preconceived notion of how it's going to turn out.
I always bring a portfolio with a notepad, and I actually take a copy of the actual position announcement, and I will start asking questions from that if I have to.
Yep. Oh, position announcement with highlighting. Because that shows that you've researched. Not just, hey, I'm looking for a job. Hey, we've got a job. Hey, let's talk. No, you've looked into what they have, made their desires public. So just like we do, or I'm teaching you guys to do with things like news articles, examine the vacancy announcement and say, what are the strategic things you see in here? What are the key things you see in here? And highlight them, because then when you're in the interview and you have the opportunity to talk about it, do you have any questions? You open your portfolio, and right there is a vacancy announcement with your notes and highlights. They're going to go, this is more than the average applicant. And again, no investment in time during the interview. You are not wasting their time by opening your portfolio and seeing the job announcement with highlighting and notes and that sort of thing. Do you have questions? And you open it up and you say, there's my question right there. That means you've thought about it. You know what they're going to ask, so be prepared to respond. Don't waste their time. You know, like, don't worry about that. And again, the reflection, I think, I just thought of that, is a good one, because what interests them should interest you. What they're excited about, you should be excited about. What they're afraid of, you should be afraid of. So that when they're not there at the office, you can help protect their best interests. So yeah. Okay. Anything else before I move on? Thank you for sharing, Ron. That's helpful. Very, very good stuff. Okay. I wanted to talk about CISA Bad Practices. I don't know if you guys have given a thought to this. This is something that we first discussed in 2021 when CISA announced them. But this piqued my interest when I looked, again, I review things when I'm online, and I saw a YouTube video from an RSA conference in 2022 where CISA actually came and talked about their bad practices. And I said, ooh, good stuff. I took their slides and made them my slides, So as we're doing this, what do you think about when I say bad practices, mentees? What do you think about? What comes to mind Thoughts? Okay. All right. We'll find out what CISA had in mind when they did these bad practices. The first thing they said, why do we have bad practices? And they said during this RSA conference, it was using a learning principle that says focus on the critical few. If you do nothing else, these are the things that you should do. If you avoid nothing else, these are the things that you should avoid. The critical few. And oh, by the way, if you are in an interview and they say, what would you recommend? You would probably gain points by saying, well, the CISA bad practices say not to do these three things, so I would say that's a great place for us to start. See what I'm saying? You've researched CISA bad practices. You're aware of them. You know that they basically point out, and we'll talk about it, but they point out the real things that you shouldn't be doing today, immediately. And the other thing about bad practices that they said, and this brought up my thought for next week, it is an element of risk management. Risk management, in short, means examine things that could happen in a manner that allows you to prioritize them. Number one, to understand them, and number two, prioritize them, because you can't address every risk. You cannot. Aliens arrived from the planet QT7 and attacked our infrastructure. Well, that's something that most people probably don't have a line item in their risk register that says aliens from QT7 attack our infrastructure. Okay, so you can't address everything, but try and think of everything. And then put the ones that are a little more likely than QT7 on your risk register. So one of the principles is think about what could happen. And so focusing on the critical few bad practices means if you do this, this is what's going to happen. So it is a principle. It is an element of risk management. Discussion on that? Okay. So the lead up was the reason why CISA developed the bad practices, it is their understanding, and I think rightly so, that many, perhaps most organizations are target rich, and cyber poor. Target rich, cyber poor. In other words, they have a lot of vulnerabilities or possible areas of vulnerability. Their, what's it called, attack landscape? Is that the word, Chris? Attack landscape?
I believe so, yes. They're, I don't want to use the term low-hanging fruit, but yeah.
Well, that's a good way of saying it. You have lots of weak links. Think about it that way. They will always attack at the weakest link. If you have lots of weak links, that should be something that you should take a look at. So target rich, that's what that means. And cyber poor basically means many organizations, especially mid-sized and smaller, don't have the resources to come up with somebody who is a dedicated cyber researcher. Somebody who you can say, oh, all cyber issues are this person's, and they will bring to me what's important. That's a CISO. Well, cyber poor means I can't afford a CISO. I run a grocery store. Those sorts of things. So cyber poor. You don't have that in-house resource pool that you can lean on. So target rich, because you don't know what you don't know. And cyber poor, you may not have the resources to get smarter. And so, as a result, There's a widespread willingness to accept dangerous risk. Sadly, a lot of it is risk that they are unaware of. Okay, I remember that being part of the conversation. This was a bunch of geeks talking to a bunch of geeks about everyone else. They say willingness to accept dangerous risk. I would go on and say they don't even know it exists. They don't even know where their weak links are.
Or they also feel they're invincible as well. That cannot happen to me. I'm a lowly business that does nothing in the real society.
Right.
But in reality, if you have money, you're a target.
They're and very, very good point, Chris. People could have in their minds, well, they don't go after these folks, or they go after these folks so they don't have time to go after me. They're the high value targets, I'm low value. Well, guess what? There are more than enough black hats out there that you need to be concerned about. Okay, what a bad practice is and isn't. Number one, unimpeachably dangerous. In other words, everyone in the room can agree that these are things that are not practices we should be doing. All right? And also, it is not simply the opposite of a good practice. That's something to think about. Bad practices might identify a culture that needs to be addressed. So don't be thinking in terms of these are two ends of the same spectrum. They may not be. So a bad practice is not simply the opposite of a good practice. If you eliminate a bad practice, that does not mean that you are practicing a good practice. You have eliminated the bad practice, yes, but it doesn't necessarily mean you are or you aren't. And then the way they put it is, it was the simplest, easy to digest, and direct guidance that CISA can provide. So these are the CISA bad practices that are currently in their website. Number one, use of unsupported or end-of-life software. I would also suggest that unpatched means unsupported. So if you haven't patched your software, like that guy did at LastPass, he was using software that was dozens of versions behind. So unsupported or end-of-life software or unpatched. Next one, use of known, fixed, or default passwords and credentials. In other words, if you buy a security camera and it has a default password, change that password. It comes with it out of the box. Well, that means it comes out of 1,000 boxes out in the real world. And they published it somewhere. Go ahead.
I'll go on the known side is if you've used that password before and you use that password everywhere, that's not a good practice either. And I will make the argument that, hey, if you use this password and you use it everywhere, that's not a good that's a bad practice. I think CISA will agree with me.
Right. And fixed passwords, that's another one. What if you can't change a password? It's burned into the device. Well, that's not a device you want to have, because anybody can use Google. Good guys and bad. And then the last one, use of single-factor authentication specifically for remote or admin access.
It's got oh, go ahead. I interrupted you.
The reason is that you can be monitored.
Did you see the Sans article about GitHub forcing the developers to use multi-factor authentication?
No.
Check your Sans newsletter. It's very interesting.
Okay, very cool. So single-factor authentication is a no-no, especially if you're talking about remote or administrative access. Remote access, well, that's basically you to your bank. That's you to your 401k. That's you to Amazon. That's you to Walmart. So guess what? You should be using multi-factor authentication so you're avoiding a bad practice. Here now today. CISA's final word, and the guy quoted this during the briefing. If you're doing one or more of these bad practices, you absolutely must stop. That sort of says it all. The point is, these are weak links in the chain. Regardless of what other things you're doing, this is where the bad folks are going to go for. They're going to start there. They're going to go for the easy wins. And the easy wins could be that you're not doing one of these things. Okay? So do these things, and you will not be doing bad practices. Okay? Make sense, everybody? Pay attention to that. So if you're in an interview and somebody says, you know, what would you do to improve our organization? Start with these and say, well, you know, these are the absolute worst. Let's make sure they don't exist. Good approach. Good approach. Have that in your sheath, so if they do ask, you can bring it out. It's one of your tools to say, I'm aware of the Department of Homeland Security's bad practices, and those are the things that I think we should absolutely focus on first and foremost. Great approach. Okay? Anybody else? We're in our last 2 minutes.
Right.
Was this helpful?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, very helpful.
Very cool. And Ron, again, I applaud you. You're doing what you need to do, and so I encourage you to keep at it. Indeed is a good resource. Also, and Chris, I don't know if this is found, but if you go on CyberSeek, they will actually give you a number of vacancies that they found in your particular area for your particular career field.
Yeah.
Do you know if they go on to describe where those are?
No, it's within that specific geographic area. But the one thing I do like about CyberSeek is they give you the top positions that are available on the one side of the map. Cyberseek.org is a great website because it actually has a pathway of entry-level positions and roles you can look for. They tell you the search, they tell you the skills that employers are looking for. And all it is just it takes LinkedIn job ads and Indeed job ads and Dice job ads. Oh, I'll shorten this, sorry. They put them together and aggregate the data and display it out in dashboard-like scenarios, and they say, here's what the top things everybody's looking for.
Right.
It's all over on CS-Sensei where I post cyberseek.org if you need to find it, but if you want to email me or IM me or something, let me know and I'll point you where this website is.
I did a careers briefing in the Phoenix area, and I went into CyberSeek and I said for the Phoenix area, and I found they had like 1,900 cybersecurity practitioners in the greater Phoenix area, 1,900, but they had an additional 1,400 vacancies.
Almost a 1-to-1 ratio.
Almost, which means that yes, there were 1,900 people in jobs doing the work now that you can basically say, you know, they have filled the vacancies, but then there were, I'd say 2/3 or more waiting to be filled. And if this guy leaves this job and goes to this job, you now have a vacancy over here. So you have 1,900 people, you need an additional 1,400 just to fill the vacancies that are there.
The line I would use, and you're probably going to hear, well, they're all senior level jobs where the people are retiring.
Yep.
Still, pick the things that they were doing.
Yep.
Put it on your learning list and say, I want to research what they were doing. Because eventually, this all goes through cycles. The average person holds a job for 2.5 years.
Right
now, there's no longer the longevity, and the businesses are now aware of it.
Yep. Good points. So everybody have fun with CyberSeek. It will give you enthusiasm to keep going on. I will tell you that. So that's all I have. Really enjoyed it. Again, Ron, you're my champion. Appreciate very much that you went and did this. It'll give you more enthusiasm to do it the next time. Don't get burned out. Keep trying. That's how you win. Okay? Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Have a good weekend. Bye.
Okay.